Hello everyone. How is it going? How is Saturday afternoon treating you guys? It's good. Let me quickly share my screen as well. It's so nice to see a lot of our folks are around. Thank you so much everyone for joining in. I think we can get started. We are slightly late as well. All right. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So I would not be able to see the chat again since I'm sharing. So I will feel free to drop in your questions in the chat or Q&A. All right. All right. So let me quickly introduce myself for people who know me, people who do not know me. I am Ekta Maheshwarii. I serve as a lead data scientist with Accenture Baltics. I have been with AlmaBetter since a very long period now, I think more than a year. And we've been studying around machine learning and other, all the life cycle of the data science. But I think it was a good idea for us to also understand how do we fit in the, the pieces that we learn in our everyday classes into the industries, like into the real world. Like some of you are part of Almax and you might be appearing or have started appearing for interviews, and you might be appearing for multiple industries. When I say industry, I mean like healthcare or CPG, retail, e-commerce. All of these are different industries in itself, right? So although every industry right now in today's world is using data and would be using data for the years to come, but and data science is always going to be a part of all of integral part of all of these industries. So what we'll do today is, today's agenda is to understand how do we what is healthcare as an industry, what does it look like, and why is it so complex, why is it just not hospital, doctor, patient, why is just this not the ecosystem. We'll try to delve into the details, and then we'll try to understand how does data science fit in the healthcare domain. Okay. Again, feel free to drop in all your questions in the chat or Q&A section. We'll take at the end of the session. Okay. All right. Awesome. So all of you might be all right. I think we have to. Right. So as we discussed, today's agenda is primarily around healthcare. So what we'll go around is try to understand the industry at an overview level, then try to understand how does, like, when you say healthcare, you understand that we are talking about medicines or vaccines or different treatment practices for any diseases. So what are these types of healthcare industry? What is the development of the major product, that is drugs? When I say drugs, it's not drugs. What we mean in healthcare, we call drugs as medicine. So every time I'm going to refer to drugs, please do not give a smile or laugh on it. It's more about the medicines that we're talking about. Then we'll try to understand how do they make money. Okay, like of course the real purpose of being into industry or being into business is how you make money, right? As Ashneer says, like dhanda kaise chalta hai na? So we'll try to understand that. Then we'll try to understand overall value chain, like how many stakeholders are involved, what are the the different roles and activities of everybody in this every entire step. Say start from the start of the drug to marketing of the the medicines. So and then we'll talk about how does data science and different use cases in it. And last and not the least, I would like you all to go through the end, because in the end we'll discuss what are the things, or a few things that you should keep in mind before applying for the healthcare industry. When I say healthcare industry, we'll get into what exactly is healthcare industry, what do I mean by which industries or which companies would I mean by healthcare. We'll come to that part, right? Awesome. So let's get started, let's get into the details. All right. So everybody, when we talk about healthcare, Actually, let me have the chat here. Yes. All right, everybody. So anytime we talk about healthcare, what does the first things that come to your mind? Drop in your chats. What are the first things? Like, is it hospital? Is it doctor? Is it patients? What all things come to your mind? Medicine. Okay. Charishma says medicine. Mayank says doctors. Pooja says medicine. Treatment. Pavan says company that produces drug is what Nikhil says. Healthcare as a business. What do you think is it? Right, injections, treatments, the different types of diseases. Very good. Amol says insurance. Yes. Pavan says reports and analysis. Interesting. You've been around the doctors a lot. Ankush says to improve the speed and accuracy of diagnosis. Yeah, Ankush, that's aim. That's a goal for all of us. What do you understand by it? Tablets, hospitals, genome sequence, says Gulzar. Wow, amazing. All right, I think good responses. So, right. So the first thing that comes to my mind as well is, of course, the hospitals, doctors, the medicines, or when we talk about all of, few of us might have pets, so the vet doctors and the ambulance, all of these like comes to my mind when we talk about healthcare. But that's just the front part of it. What exactly goes in the back end is basically the other part of it, like the insurance companies, or say the claims that we do on an everyday basis just for a regular visit of a doctor. What does that come under? And a lot of other things that come under. So when I say healthcare industry, what I mean by it is, you know uh, healthcare sector consists of businesses that provide, again, medical services, or they manufacture drugs that we've mentioned, most of us. As Sunil has mentioned, provider and claim data. Again, providers and claims. Providers is basically anybody who provides healthcare facilities to you, be it doctors, then be it hospitals, anybody of those sorts. Insurance and other facilitate of these healthcare companies. Now, the first thing that we need to understand is how is healthcare different from other industries? It's I would say there is a vast difference between it, because we never plan on using the industry, right? Like none of us in our good minds would want to use the industry. Like you wouldn't predict that you would break your arm while cycling, right? Or while you are into industry, like say you are having a heart attack, you are not going to shop around the hospitals and see what's the best price, and you're going to take your so and so relative to that place. That's not going to happen, whereas we do that in other industries, right? So we'll have to think about in various ways how is this industry different, and how can we help them out solve a lot of different problems. All right. You guys have to ignore my ringtone. All right. Now coming to the part where which companies come under the healthcare. Why am I just trying to give you guys an overview? Is we'll get into details, but first try to understand what industry are we talking about. What industries do you think is the companies that we will target? So again, I have put in a list of companies. Again, it's not going to do justice to the entire healthcare, or the pharma companies in India or globally, or the insurance companies. I have missed a lot. These are just to give you a few ideas. Like we use Dr. Reddy's say medicine on an everyday basis, or say we use we've taken vaccines right now. We've taken, few of us has taken Pfizer, few of us has taken AstraZeneca. So there are multiple companies that has come under this. So the biggest pharma company that I can think of in India is Sun Pharma, or Cipla, or GSK. Again, GSK is a European country. So again, lot of companies involved here, but we'll not get into that. It's just to give you an idea what does the pure healthcare company gets into. Now there are companies that you're going to target that comes from the consulting side, like the Deloitte or McKinsey or ZS Associates. All of these come under the part where you try to help them out from a consultant point of view, from a data science point of view. So we'll come to that companies and what to keep in mind in the end. Right now we'll try to understand the industry. Okay. All right. Awesome. So what I want to help you guys understand first before we again go to the main part, that is drugs and the pharma life cycle, we'll try to understand where did the industry come from. So remember, we did our in our earlier years of our school, we were taught, how penicillin came into picture, and how did that transform into people taking shots because of the cow flu, and they're taking cow milk to do a lot of other things. So it we started from 19th century, where a lot of penicillin and other stuff were coming into picture. People were using ether as a anesthetic. Like if you need to do an operation somewhere else, it used to be anesthetic. For anesthesia reasons, you used to take ether. So a lot of different things have happened from 19th to 20th century to now, when we are standing in the 21st century. It is more personalized now. It is more based on your medical history, based on your past family history, and all of those reasons. You are getting a targeted therapy, or something that is so personalized to you and your genomes, uh, or your DNA again, right? So it's been a crazy breakthrough, okay, over the last 200 years. Now when we stand about the 21st century, what are we looking at? We're looking at the drugs, selling of the drugs. When I say commercialization, I mean selling of the drugs. Then we look at a lot of diagnostic tools, like whenever you get admitted, you might see that there are a lot of different medical devices all around you. So what are these industries and who makes them? Okay, so we've established pharmaceutical companies that makes all of these, right? So again, it's a pharmaceutical company, so small molecule. And what do they do is they make a lot of compounds, and then they try to create medications out of it. So say there are a lot of researchers involved, and a lot of R&D folks every day developing new compounds. Like for very own reason, you guys might have witnessed how COVID vaccines came into picture. Like every day some or the other company or industry or every other pharmaceutical company was coming up like, we are going to launch a vaccine, we are going to launch a vaccine. How does that come into picture? Because they were trying multiple compounds. Some did work on few population, some didn't work on the other population. So they did continuously all of those things. So these are those companies that make chemical compounds into medications. So these are called pharmaceutical companies. What are biotech companies? These are basically that use proteins manufactured from the real life, like the living systems, like plants or animals. From their protein, we try to develop drugs that can be used by like the to treat diseases. So these are called biotech companies. Now the other part of these companies are, so one says, these, they make a compound and then they try selling it under their brand name. Say they Pfizer creates a vaccine, and now they try selling it in under their name. Same goes with GSK or GlaxoSmithKline. They create, so all the medicines majorly primarily GlaxoSmithKline is biotech companies. So very clear distinction when we try to understand that whenever we talk about pharmaceutical companies, they are basically somebody who makes from compounds or chemical compounds. And when we talk about biotech, they are somebody who makes medicines from living systems. Very simple. Example of biotech company is GlaxoSmithKline. There are n number of biotech companies in India and globally. We'll not get into that. We'll try to understand what are these companies. Okay, so now the other part of these are very well-known industry is the generic companies. So what are these generic companies is, these are companies that make copies of the novel drugs. Like say there is a drug that is say selling for one medicine is being sold for say 20,000, quite possible for rare diseases like cancer or other reasons. So now not everybody can afford it, right? So they have to create copies. Government has to regulate some or the other ways for the low income people or for people who cannot afford it, right? So generic companies are somebody who makes the copies of these novel drugs, right? So now we'll try to understand what is this medicine. We've been talking about drugs, drugs, drugs. What is this drug? Okay, like how is it made? So first thing that we try to understand is what are these drugs is primarily coming from the part where we try to understand. All right. Why is the screen shaking for me? All right, it should not be shaking for you guys. All right. So when we talk about drug discovery and development, now the first part that comes to my mind is what are these industries? How is this drug made? When we talk about any, like, coming from a chemical compound or from a living system, what is it made? So first, we'll try to understand that there is two phases in it. Again, let's relate all of this knowledge with the COVID vaccine that we've seen developing in our times, right? So the discovery and development are the two phases. Now, the development of any medicine on an average usually takes around 10 to 15 years. We'll try to not relate here with 10 to 15 years in COVID vaccine, because there are times, in times of epidemic, pandemic, government or all of these healthcare industries have to expedite the process. But on an average, we'll talk about the different drugs that are being created in the market that takes around 10 to 15 years. Now, that's a huge time. What exactly happens in this? And of course, since the time is so much, you could consider the average cost of the entire successful drug to come into picture might be also too high. So as we said, the discovery part, we'll focus on the first, the discovery part, the drug discovery and the preclinical part of the things. So now, and then on an everyday basis, what these R&D doctors do is basically if they create new compounds, and imagine, for every 5,000 to 10,000 compounds that enter the research and development pipeline, ultimately only one receives approval. Who approves this? So there's a body which is called Food and Drug Authority, that is responsible for your foods, for your drugs, for your, like, the efficacy, the safety of your drugs or the safety of your foods is basically determined by this organization, FDA. Every country has its own FDA authority, so it differs from country to country. Now, talking about the discovery phase, so it includes all the early research, like to identify a new drug and test it in the lab to, this process entirely takes about 3 to 6 years, which we would then use them in all these shortlisted ones would then come into the clinical trial phase, like the development phase. What are clinical trials? Clinical trials are primarily to test these basic compounds on, say, plants, on animals, or on few cohorts of, people. Now, phase one involves only 20 to 100 people. So what does this mean is, again, this development phase, so we discussed discovery phase takes around 3 to 6 years, and by the end of it, they might have a promising candidate drug. Like, they say candidate drugs because there are multiple candidates, there might be multiple compounds that might be working, so they then want to try it and test it on the people. So now, the development phase, this process now takes an average of 6 to 7 years. What it happens is, it involves series of clinical trials, each with its own specific goals and requirements. Like, there might be a few goals that, for now, in phase one, it should just be like how we deliver product, like phase one, version two, version three of any product. Same goes for clinical trials as well, or for drugs as well. So they try to involve a candidate drug must prove to be safe and effective before it can be approved. Say that would be the phase one. So phase two then involves more or less the test on a larger group of people. Like, you might see all of these pointers, I would not repeat these pointers for you, but just to try to understand, in a very layman terms, clinical trials happen in series, and it happens on, as we grow the number of people, the number of volunteers increase, and number of testing on these people increases. So again, this entire series is not something that takes into consideration simultaneously. They happen they do not happen parallelly, they happen simultaneously, is what I want to say. When I say simultaneously, I mean, uh like, if phase one on 20 to 100 people is happening, they'll have some results, then they'll improve those things, they'll take back the feedbacks and then improve the compound again, then now they create a new compound, and then that is being tested on phase two. So they need to properly document all of these and try to understand at every phases how these things change, right? So now, coming to the part where in the discovery phase. So sorry, I think we've moved past discovery. So now we come to the development phase. So again, preclinical tests, and then these are administered by, different tests. Say phase one is drug safety testing with small number of human. Then we come to the efficacy part. Then we come to the phase three, where it's tested on a larger number of people. I think the first thing that I should first clear out is what is drug safety, what is drug efficacy, what is drug efficiency. Efficacy and efficiency is primarily, so few terminologies that you see on the screen right now is something that I would want you to be well versed with before going for any interviews out there. Or to understand the industry in the first place, you have to first understand what are these terminologies. As we said, for clinical trials, there are, so there is an NDA. What's an NDA? NDA is a new drug application. So as soon as you are ready with all of these development and discovery phase, after this 6 to 7 years of clinical trials, you would see an NDA submitted. What's an NDA? NDA is a new drug application. Like, out of all these compounds, we have now shortlisted to one, and this is our compound, and this is our winner model, and this is something that is going, that has been, coming through the preclinical phase to all the trials, and then we want to submit this. Now it's up to FDA to approve it based on whatever results and outputs that we showcase. Coming to the stakeholders who are actually involved in this, people like healthcare providers, accounts, payers, research and development team, a lot of people are involved. So we need to understand what does these terminologies stand for. HCP, HCA, payers. Not all of the terminologies that we see here might be used right away. We'll maybe use those technology or those terminologies maybe going forward. So just try to keep in mind what are healthcare, what are providers, what are accounts. Providers can be anybody who provides you service or treatment, say doctors, say nurses, say specialists. All of these key opinion leaders, all of these come under the HCP side. uh Drugs. Now coming to the drugs part, so there are multiple drugs that are being created. One, there are few jo apan jaake, like I think we go on a medical shop and we say bhaiya crocin de do, hai na? So that's something that is over the counter drugs. So anything that you can buy on the counter itself, that is something that is the allergies or any burns that we have, anything of those sorts, those are called OTC drugs. What are generic drugs? Generic drugs, as we understood from the previous slide, that generic companies are somebody who creates the bioequivalent copy of the novel drugs. So these are called generic drugs. What are specialty drugs? Specialty drugs are somebody who needs it, that are restricted to very rare diseases, or say treatment of all of these, like the, I would say not rare, but again the high complex diseases, like other than the cancer, AIDS, all of these things. Now these drugs are specialty drugs. Coming to the efficacy efficiency part of things, like you might read here in phase one, phase two, phase three, that tests on new demographic or tests for efficacy or effectiveness of the drug. What does efficacy stand for is what's the response or what's the performance of that drug in a controlled condition. These phases, these clinical trials happen in a very controlled manner. Like they have to maintain the population. Say, white people are to, say if you're testing on 20 people, okay, so they have to maintain a ratio of white to black to Caucasian population to Asian population, and they have to maintain that these guys have to eat a particular diet, or they have to be in a particular environment. So all of these is called controlled conditions. So now these drugs efficacy is tested in their controlled environment. But when we talk about efficiency of the drugs, it means the performance of the drugs in the real world environment. You would not always be in a particular diet, or you would not always be, say, in a controlled environment. When even if your doctor suggests that you should be on a liquid diet or you should be on a particular diet, you would still go around. So in those scenarios, your medicine should not be something that proactively creates some problems for you. So you have to check the efficiency of the drugs in the real world setting as well. So we understand the difference between efficacy and efficiency now. So every time we use drug efficacy, it's going to be something that is in a controlled environment. Efficiency, something that is in the real world setting. All right. Now there is slight difference between the demographic that we usually see in the customers versus what we actually see in the patients. So here again, our customers are patients, but again, when we talk about demography in the different AlmaBetter projects, you guys might have seen demography stands for age, employment, what's the marital status, all of those things. In patient demography, what's more important is the age, the ethnicity, any medical history, any allergies that you might have, anything that is specific that comes from your family side. So all of these comes under the demography of the patients. I want you guys to know all of these terminologies because somewhere or the other you might be aware or you might be using these keywords, and you might be using them as features in your models. So what do they stand for is something that you need to understand at a very high level. All right. Now, to the part where how do they make money? How is money coming into picture, right? So now we've discussed the early stage. So we've discussed the preclinical phase. We've discussed phase one, phase two, phase three. So we are aware till early stages of this. When we talk about the entire pharma product life cycle, it's primarily three stages: early, middle, late. Very simple. We've tried to break it down into very simple ways. Now, what's early is something that we've seen. What's middle is the once the drug is all approved by the FDA, it gets into the launch phase, like the drug is launched, like how vaccines were launched. Now, once the vaccines are launched or drugs are launched, they now enter the typical life cycle of any product that you would see in the market. Like any product, P&G creates a new product, say any CPG product is created, say dishwasher is liquid is created. It has its introduction, it has its growth, maturity, and decline. For any product in your mind, you should always think that there are four stages for any product after it's launched. So after it's launched, it is introduced, it grows into, mature, like it matures over the period of time, because people are now well aware of, how things are, how, what is the benefits of that. Over the period of time, that product grows into a mature state where, it's more or less, people are aware of it. Like you are aware of what Dolo does. Dolo is right now a mature drug, because every other person is aware what Dolo does. But again, there might be a possibility where there might be another competent that might come into picture, and the maturity might eventually decrease, and the simpler drug, or something that is not that heavy dose, because Dolo is considered very heavy dose and slightly costlier. So as soon as a competitor drug comes into picture, the product's life cycle goes down, or the sales or the revenues of that drug goes more down. So once that is done, so remember, we talked about the FDA, we talk about 6 to 7 years, the pre-development, the discovery part, the development part, and then the coming to the market part. So overall, whenever you start with a new application, you have a patent to your drug. Now, it's just a chemical compound, right? At the end of the day, it's just say two chemical compounds together made a drug. Now if you tell me this, I am also going to make another drug that is exactly same, right? If I know the constituents of the drug, I can also do the same. And since you have submitted so many outputs, or every detail of what your drug is made of, how did it perform on different population, it's out there. So how do you protect it? Like anybody can just make it. I just researched so many years on it, and now anybody can just take that information and start making it, and they can start making money, and they just have to sell it in a less say in a more cheaper format. But that's not how it is. In drugs, that is something that is maintained as a patent. Like how we write white papers, or how we write few things that nobody else can take away from us. That's exactly how patents also work in drugs. So as soon as you start with the clinical phase, the patent are usually around 20 years. Now imagine 20 years, may say 3 to 6 years goes in discovery, 6 to 7 years goes in the development. Now you just have remaining very few years, right, into you in your hands. So now the question is, how do I still make money? How do things happen? So what happens is, earlier, remember, we talked about pharmaceutical companies are the one who makes the drugs, and generic companies are who makes the copy of drugs. So not everybody can make a copy of drug, and not everybody can make a copy of drug as soon as it's launched. So as soon as that patent ends, or the market exclusivity ends, in other words, that is where the generic companies come into picture, and the sales, and then they start making the compounds and the medicines in a cheaper format, and then they start selling it. So now the sales or the revenues from pharmaceutical companies go to the generic companies. This is how generic companies stay into the market, and this is how pharmaceutical companies now focus on creating another drug, and that would go on for another 20 years. So this is how things happen, and this is how they are made. So just to summarize again, how do they make money, or the overall life cycle of a pharmaceutical product is early, middle, and late. Early is basically R&D. Middle is basically from the time of launch of your drug to the time of the end of your market exclusivity. And the later stages, after your market exclusivity ends, how does the generic companies come into picture, right? So that's exactly how the entire product life cycle goes on into picture. Now, what happens in the back end? This is just, now we're just talking about the pharma companies right now. But how does that come to a patient? How does a patient know, there, for say, just for fever, there might be n number of medicines, right? So how do I as a patient know? And what happens in the, the back end to the where the actually manufacturing product unit stands, and where the, the patient holds? It's a, lot of different stakeholders involved. So just to give an overview, I think it's a very simple, trying to understand a workflow here is, you go to a doctor, right? You every time you feel something, you go to a doctor. That doctor prescribes your medicine. You go to your insurance payers, or you might just directly go to pharmacy. Either way. So usually you go to your insurance payers, and you tell them that, these are the list of medicines that have been prescribed by my doctor. I need to get them. So you use your insurance cards, or you use your insurance policies to go to the pharmacy, get medicines. Where does this pharmacy get the, the product? They either get it through the distribution center or the wholesalers. Where do distribution center and wholesaler gets the, the drugs? They are basically sent by the pharma brand owners or the pharma companies. Now, how does these pharma company that we see every day inside their office they make it? No, not really. They actually they have a tie up with the manufacturers or the suppliers, and they actually make them, the products, and then they send it. So if you see the gray lines, these are the product flow. If you see the money flow, these are the black lines. So if we see the product line, again, suppliers create the drugs, they send it to the pharma brand owners. The brand owners actually connect with the manufacturers, and they put their branding on it. Once that branding is done, they either send it to the, the distribution centers, or they send it to the wholesalers, whoever is nearer and whoever is tied up with them. Once that has happened, all of these sent to the different pharmacies, be it pharmacies inside the hospitals, be it on the roads, anywhere that you see pharmacies, they get their drugs from either these two centers. Once that has happened, then they directly, pharmacies give it to the patients or the consumers. How does the money flow? Money, patients pay a periodic amount of premium to the insurance companies, and these insurance companies in return take care of their treatments, their drugs, their other entire, all the activities that happen. And then the money goes to the pharmacy, sends it back to the brand owners or the wholesalers. Once this is sent back, they send the money to the suppliers and the manufacturers. So this entire product and the money flow goes on in a similar fashion in healthcare at a very high level. All right. So now we've looked into the drug discovery, we've looked into the launches, we've looked into the, the finished manufactured products. Now we have to look into how does it happen. So now we come to the part where data science fits into the picture. So there are, we understood there are patients, there are pharmacies involved, there are insurance companies or the payers involved. Then there are a lot of different mergers, like the insurance companies goes to say different hospitals, and they say, like, if you happen to, recommend your patients to us in different ways, there are different mergers happening. So now what we actually understand from this entire value chain is, how does data science fit into it? Before we look into how does data science fit into it, we have to first understand what are the different data sets that are available, right? So when we talk about different data sets that are available, it primarily again boils down to different types of data types. When we talk about say, on an everyday basis, you wear a Apple Watch, or you wear watches that, that track your activities, or different different sleep cycles of yours, and all of those areas. Now these are few data that comes in from the wearable devices or the social media data. Now that is in a very unstructured format. Then we come to the, your medical records, that, you might have a history of, say, diabetes, and you happen to take few of the medicines, say insulin one, but now from diabetes type 1 to type 2, you've been detected. So then what do you do in those returns? So that's exactly what, is the EMR, or the electronic medical records. Then you go to a lot of labs and you do your testing there, and you happen to do, say, on an everyday basis, you happen to take those tests back to the doctors to understand what exactly has happened to you. So now again, lab tests are happening, or the sales data, like we just saw in the different, in the life cycle of the product, or the product and the money flow. We saw how, different pharmacies are, connected with the distribution centers and the manufacturers, which the pharmaceutical companies have to take into picture and see how much sale did every distribution center did for them, or any pharmacy did for them. So different CRM and the sales data. Then you might have seen a lot of MRs, if you might be aware of the people who are representative of these companies, who go out and market these drugs to different doctors, are called MRs, or field representatives for that matter, somebody who's on field. So these go, once the drug is launched and it is in the phase of, say, growth or maturity stage of any drug, these MRs go to these doctors. They talk about the new drug that their company is associated with, and also they take in notes from what exactly is how, their current drug doing into the market. Say, right now Dolo has been into picture for a very long years of time. So you would go as a MR, you would go to a doctor and try to understand, is it working good on, Asian population, is it working good on people from, the northern side of India, or is it working well for the people from the southern side? Because again, why am I differentiating? Because it all differs on the different temperature conditions that you are in. The effect of a medicine or a drug might differ person to person. So these are few notes that these, MRs go. They come back, and they write it back down to the, the pharmaceutical companies, that so and so doctors is what I met today, and they happen to tell me about that the drug works really good on, say, people from the southern part of India, but it isn't working that well for the northern part or the eastern part. So then you have to go and understand that why is that drug not mentioning, or performing that effective, because you've already done all of those clinical trials in the real world setting. So then you have to first understand, and these are again textual notes. So textual data involved, tabular data, EMR data is involved. Lab tests are basically the images, X-ray, MRIs, all of these are basically either video or, images involved. So different types of data sets involved, different types of data types of those sets involved. So now, since we've understood what are different data types, we'll come to understand why is this so complex, and why is everybody saying that it is very difficult to model in, to create machine learning models in healthcare industry. Or why do you think healthcare is so behind in data science, whereas all of the other industries has, transmitted, or they have transitioned into a, a lot of data savvy or data educated. As we discussed, mixed data types, different data types, different data formats that are coming into picture, and not all of them are digitalized. Some would be handwritten, some would be, put in a tabular format, some would be, since these are, field representatives, they are just, somebody who's just completed 12th or 10th, and these people are not even aware how to put in the data entry. So a lot of data inconsistencies happen there. Now, say this year you were associated with ICICI Lombard for your insurance, and maybe next year you change your company or you change your insurance payer. So now the entire history of what happened to you the entire year might be missed, because now you're with, say, AXA insurance. So that is history just got deleted, or you were with AXA but you didn't really like the service, so you went with ICICI. So one year you went somewhere away, and then you came back to AXA because ICICI was also not doing a good job, and AXA actually gave you better, premium or something. So you went back. Now imagine your medical history was what with one, insurance company. Now it just shifted to another. Now that altogether that one year has been, deleted. So this happens a lot, right? We do not go to the same doctor every time. We, like, say, for, dental purposes we might go to some other doctor. So say for other purposes we might go to, say, MBBS, sorry, MBBS doctors. So different doctors, we interact on an everyday basis, and there is no storing of data. Like, today I visited this, it is only going to be stored because you were going to submit your claims, because you are going to submit for insurance companies. Now insurance companies is also, we change on an every year basis, or say monthly basis or something. Then again, it is a very inconsistent data. There is no story point, or there's no data continuous story data pointers in your particular history. So inconsistent data, different data types. Again, the location is very different. As we see, there are few that is stored with the laboratories. There are few that might be stored with there are few data sets that might be stored with the insurance companies that are not ready to share. So different location, different structures, different definitions. And the worst part is the regulations and requirements. Today it is Modi's government. Maybe they might have regulations, or keeping up with the government would be rules like you have to submit every year's your data history to somebody. Or say, every time, say diabetes, say for the blood sugar level, say now the entire doctors association in India might have agreed that the as soon as the blood sugar level is, say, more than 120, it's a diabetes type 1, say, that has been established now. Maybe over the period of time, since we are emerging and since we are evolving, that might change. And now this year that requirement would be, say, anybody who has a blood sugar level of more than 170 is diabetes 1, not 120. So now that differs again, right? Like last year the business rules were something else, this year the business rules were something else. How do you keep up with these ethics and compliances, and how do you keep putting all of these new rules into your data science models or your machine learning models? It just gets difficult, because once the model is created, you use that model again and again to now predict or do any of those use cases. But again, if the requirements or the thresholds might keep changing, you have to keep updating your data sets, and that gets very cumbersome. So all of these, now imagine we putting them using these data sets into our machine learning models. And considering healthcare is a sensitive topic, like say if you were working on a project where you had to predict whether the patient has say cancer or not through their MRI images, it is so sensitive. Say your model says that the patient doesn't have like cancer, and if it actually had, and it was a false negative or a false positive, how sensitive would that be? Like, how can you rely on a machine learning model? So you cannot just look into the accuracy of your models. A lot of precision, recall, and the right trade-off comes into picture. So the entire sensitivity of ML models is too high, and it's something that is a lot at risk. Is the reason why healthcare people as well are very hesitant to even use all of these machine learning things, because they are somebody who rely on the experts. But again, it's since the population is growing on an everyday basis, it is very impossible, in fact, for that matter, to not look at every patient's data or every patient's results by a specialist. You need a model to detect it as soon as possible. So these are few reasons why the healthcare data gets very complex, and it is very difficult to model in the first place. Now coming to the part where what are the different analytics that can how does analytics fit into this healthcare? So as we said, descriptive, predictive, prescriptive, and discovery. So there are four types that we can think of in healthcare. When I say descriptive, it's more understanding the historical trends. But as we've established, there might be a high possibility where the historical trends of a particular patient might not be consistent. For a year it might have gone to some other insurance companies, then that entire year is lost. So understanding a historical trend, say you were working on a problem statement where you had to predict whether the person would get cancer or not at his age of 30. Say that was a looking at his medical history or medical trends, you would have to determine that. How would you determine if there is a lot of inconsistencies? How do you make your model understand about these robustness or these inconsistencies? So descriptive analytics is something that, again, I think before even we get to this analytics part, getting the data in one place and getting that creating a master data record is altogether a big game in healthcare. Like any industry or any company that you might join, the first thing that they are going to look at is, do you understand the data that is involved in healthcare, and do you understand how complex it is and how inconsistent it is, that at some point of time all your job would be, entire team would be just sitting to create a master data record. Say a particular doctor was practicing at Fortis, but now he's practicing at say Columbia Asia or some other hospital. So right from the patient's history to doctor's history to the hospital's entire admin stuff, you have to first get all of this in a master data record format, because there are a lot of data vendors that are selling out these data. But again, if you just consider one data vendor and you would see the inconsistency, you have to map it with the other. Whatever that in gaps are, you have to fill it with other source, that other data vendors. So how do you match this? How does I know that Ekta Maheshwari is same as E Maheshwari? How do I concatenate all of these different data records? How do I make them into a single golden record? So this entirely is a huge project and a huge challenge in healthcare itself, rather than even going to the machine learning modeling part, which we've just understood that it gets so difficult because the data in itself is something that is a question mark into entire healthcare industry. So, right now, different use cases. We've established how data is something that can be consumed. Now, once we understand the data is in place, or we've created a golden record, say, we have master data records, what all things can we use? The first thing that we can is, and all of us might have learned in our overall course with AlmaBetter, is the classification problems and the regression problems. So to give you an example, so these are few just examples for you to understand what are different use cases involved. So say the classification is machine learning algorithms to detect. So you need to create a model where you need to label the kind of disease or medical case you're dealing with. Say you schedule an appointment with a doctor, okay, and you happen to understand that you just have the symptoms. You might have fever, you might have body ache, and you might have been feeling a lot of dizziness. Say that's something that is your symptoms. All you need to put in, say, these are the symptoms. As soon as the symptoms are put, maybe the model helps the doctor before even you visiting, that tentatively this might be pneumonia, or tentatively this might be malaria case. So once that model is already in place, and you while you've scheduled your appointment, you've put in these symptoms, and your model has already given a brief idea of the to the doctor, half of the job is already done. You don't even have to go, doctor, I feel there's a stomach ache here, then there's here, I feel a pain here. Rather than doing all of this, and you save a lot of time for both the doctor and the patient, and the process gets expedited. So these are few things that can be used in where data science can be used. The other part is the recommendations. Now say you create a marketplace kind of an app where you just put in, and you want to know what are the, so these are my symptoms. So the model says that you might be probably suffering from pneumonia. Now what you have pneumonia, or you might have pneumonia. So then which doctors do you go? You are new in a city, you don't know what to do. So then in those scenarios, your ML algorithms can recommend which doctors, based on the the near, or based on your place wherever you're located. It can suggest different doctors, it can suggest different hospitals, or different time schedules. Say the nearest hospital might have a doctor that treats pneumonia, but again, the first appointment that you might get is 2 days later. So you would still want to travel, say, 5 kilometers more, but go to a doctor that sees you today. So different recommendations based on other parameters can be determined through ML. Now coming to the clustering part. So clustering is basically ML can help you group together similar medical cases to analyze the patterns. So again, this is more for the R&D parts. So imagine you can use data science not just from a patient point of view or a doctor point of view, like these are the end users of your drugs, right? But also from the R&D or the discovery side. Like when we talk about the R&D side, you can imagine, like similar patterns or similar medical cases. Say you are developing a drug that treats ulcer, no, let's just reduce the degree of diseases. Maybe you are again, let's take diabetes itself. You are creating a drug that is that treats diabetes 1, type 1. So now now you are somebody who is involved in the research and development, and you are working with that department, where you are working as a data scientist for the research and development of that particular drug that is being created for diabetes type 1. Now you have to first identify whom do you go around and ask for the right target identifications. Like you remember in clinical phase 1, we were talking about 20 to 100 folks coming in, as we move ahead, we talk about more thousands of people coming in. How do you understand, how do you know these are the right population? Do you, like, right now, if you are suffering from say diabetes, you would not go to a clinical trial, you would go to a doctor, right? How do you know I need to get this patient to my clinical trial, and how do you market all of these things, or how do you identify the right target to, get into the picture? So clustering and all of these algorithms can actually help you understand if there are similar medical cases, and say you have a tie up with the insurance companies. You make a deal with the insurance company as a pharmaceutical company that uh, you get me patients with so and so medical history. I, in turn, whenever I launch this drug, is going to give you and your insurance, your patients, say 50% off on those drugs. So there are multiple deals that happen in these mergers and acquisitions kind of things. So now you have the data from the insurance companies that these are the people that are, going through these medical cases. You use those and you cluster other people, and you use like similar, profiles or similar patient history might be clustered together, and you could use them in different phases of your clinical trials. So again, data science is not just for the end users, but also for the people who are involved in all of these stakeholders. Is the reason why we actually went to the entire value chain of pharma and try to understand what are the different people or the stakeholders involved. Now coming to the prediction part, of course, prediction is something that is all of us is aware that you can use this to, predict if the patient is going to be, is going to be detected with a tumor or not, say at the age of 30 or not. So different image data comes into picture, and a lot of computer vision things that you can do on these things. The biggest problem that we face in healthcare is anomaly detection. Anomaly detection is something because there, as we discussed, since we are all, we say Indians itself, they might be situated all over the globe. So not a drug that is specifically created for Indians or Indian environment can be used by somebody who is now settled in US, because again, it is an Indian, but it's going to, show different results. It is going to show different patterns or different response out of that drug for that particular individual. So you need to understand a lot of scenarios where anomaly detection is a huge problem. You cannot just simply tell your model that if there is a dot in, say, around these areas, it's a tumor. That doesn't happen that way. You have to keep doing anomaly detections at every stage of your data sets, right? So that is one. The other is the automation. Of course, the automation part is basically automating all of these scheduling appointments, taking care of the feedbacks, taking care of the hospital scenarios, admin stuff. All of these things comes under the automation part of the things. So that's pretty much the use cases as well. I will pause here to see if you guys have any questions before we get to the things to keep in mind. Or you know what? No, actually, wait. I will drop in and see if you guys have any questions. Right. So I will quickly open the chat. Processing of data integrity is nightmare in healthcare. That's true. Yes. So meanwhile, you guys put in your questions. Let me also talk about what things to keep in mind. Okay, while applying. So now we've established different pharmaceutical companies. So dominantly, you're going to apply to three different types of industries: the consulting companies, the pharma companies, and the healthcare facilitators. So what are these consulting companies? These are basically people like ZS, Deloitte, Koenig. All of these are basically those companies that help pharmaceutical companies or pharma industries to consume their data better in a better way, or they help develop different data science strategies around their business goals or their objectives. So different things that might be involved that as a consultant you might do is through these consulting companies. Again, consulting companies don't just, like, ZS is somebody that is primarily dealing with the pharma industries, but they also deal with other priority industries like CPG and e-commerce. But Deloitte and all of these others like Consig, all of these basically not just deal with pharma, but they deal with other industries as well, like the CPG, healthcare. So if you are somebody who just wants to have a flavor of, how to work around healthcare and, just do a couple of projects, you could go with these consulting companies and try to understand, just do one or two projects and see, how is it, what is the industry, what can I contribute to that. So consulting companies are somebody who provides services to them. Pharma companies, like you might have heard about a lot of Novartis hiring, or Johnson and, Eli Lilly is somebody that hires. So sorry, it's Eli Lilly. It's Eli Lilly, right? So these industries, these are proper pharmaceutical companies. So now they have their own records, they have their own data of the clinical trials and different research and development records, or different target identifications that they might have done with the insurance companies and tie-ups with. So these companies have their own use cases, and they have their own, business problems to solve. So these are those companies that are primarily involved with the, the medical records or the doctors, and they are aware of the networks of the pharmacies, hospitals, lot of data that they have at their end, right? And the others are the healthcare facilitators, like, the Fortis or Columbia Asia. All of these are basically hospitals that happen to have the video or the imaging data in those scenarios. So yes. So these are few things that are different companies that you might be applying to. So what do you keep in mind is basically, first thing, very important is, you have to understand that pharmaceutical is the only industry that is probably that the person who makes the decision to which product you should buy, to person who pays for that product, to person who actually consumes that product, is three very different stakeholders. Like, there might be a possibility that a physician is somebody who makes that decision for you. Like a doctor will tell you which medicine to buy. You are not aware that, Dolo is going to be, curable for me. That is something that our moms basically act as a doctor in our houses, and they tell us. But that's not how it happens in the other diseases, right? So your mom would not be able to tell you what would be the right medicine if you suffer from diabetes or something else. So in those scenarios, a doctor or a physician makes that decision for you. Insurance companies pay for them, and you are the one to consume it. So this is the only industry that happens, that doesn't take the decision by itself. Whereas, say you are somebody, say we talk about the CPG industries. When I say CPG, I mean consumer packaged goods product industry, for people who don't might not be aware. So these are those products, like, say a bottle of a jam or jam jar, or, sauces. So if you like chips, you're going to go out, Virat Kohli's, say, promoting some chips, and you want to try that. So you are the one to decide which product you want to buy. You are the one to pay for it, and you are the one to consume it. Whereas this is primarily how it happens for, say, e-commerce, retail, all of these, but in pharma it doesn't happen. So let's keep that in mind while we have some data sets and data different pointers in our head while applying to these companies. And the second and the important thing that I would want you guys to know is the pharmaceutical distribution value chain. Like we just went through different stakeholders involved. That was at a very high level. Like at a very high level, you understood what are the different value chain stakeholders involved in that entire value chain. But I would want you guys to study a bit about it and be ready with it whenever you apply to these companies, because that's the first thing that they're going to understand. And if you know all of these details, it's just going to be an added advantage and a good, cherry on the cake for you. And last and not the least that we discussed is the product and the market flow model, like the how the product flows from every stakeholder to the other, and how the money flows back to every stakeholder, back to the supplier or the pharma companies. So end of the day, it's a business, and you are here to help business take better and informed decisions through data. So if you don't understand the business of this industry, you are not be going to be able to, do your best while through helping them out through data. So you need to understand this product and market flow of any industry, for that matter, wherever you're applying, before you apply for any industry, and specifically for healthcare, since it gets slightly tricky and slightly complex. Okay, so that's about it. Things to keep in mind while you're applying for different healthcare industries or consulting companies which are involved in healthcare projects. I would take pause to see if your questions are any questions that you guys might have for me. For this type of situation, so Ajit asks, for this type of situations, how do we know which ML algorithm is worked well for our model? Right. So again, it's a trade-off, Ajit. Again, the here the you are not the one to decide how much precision is perfect or how much accuracy or how much recall might be a good idea. Here, the businesses and the data strategists, or I would say data leaders, actually decide that. So as soon as you have the evaluation matrix corresponding values, you can then try and test around and experiment with different ML models and see which one is the nearest to those evaluation matrix. So that is that. Pavan asks, will we get the slides at the end of the session as PDF? Absolutely, yes. Don't have to take notes. I should have said that in start, but yes, you are going to get that. Could you please zoom the screen? Oh, I'm sorry. You will have the Sarthak. You're going to have the like the, I would say PDF, so you don't worry about it. All right. Ashruti says, in India, apart from ZS, Novartis, Eli Lilly, are there more companies who deal primarily in healthcare or pharmaceutical data science, especially focusing in on drug discovery pipeline and R&D? Yes, Ashruti, a lot of them. As you mentioned, these three as well. There is Johnson, there is AstraZeneca, there is IQVIA. IKEA is furniture company. IQVIA is basically a data vendor that also involves lot of data migration and different concatenation or consolidation of data sets from different stakeholders that we just discussed. So that is that. If you just search for pharma companies in India, you would get it on Google as well. But I would say few of them that is on a very high level hiring is, of course, Eli Lilly, Novartis, yes, and also United Health Groups. And other than UHG, I think AstraZeneca as well is hiring. Them you will have to check, I think, on LinkedIn and Google. But yeah, I think these are few things that I can think of top of my mind. All right, Sammed asks, technical knowledge of healthcare sector is important. When you talk about an industry, Samit, it's never technical knowledge, it's more about business knowledge. So yes, business knowledge for a healthcare sector is important, but I think what we just covered right now at a very high level, maybe you could go in more detail. That's it. I think that should be good enough for you to apply for the industries. And of course, if somebody has any more interest, more want to delve into the industry and have few questions, feel free to drop in my Slack, my LinkedIn. I am more than happy to help you guys understand healthcare industry. I think I should have started with that, but healthcare is an industry that is very close to me, and I have been working with healthcare since more than 5 years now in different from consulting background. So it's been a tremendous journey, and I think with the best of my knowledge, I could help you guys if you have any questions. Ajit asks, for this type of situation, right, I think Ajit, we have answered this. What if our model gives a wrong prediction? Sarthak, of course, that is something that you have to then understand. Where are you going? Where is your model? You have to do an error analysis. You have to do a lot of different things on your models. I think that part is something that, is going to be, as you experiment, as you try and run, you are going to understand how it matters, right? Processing, Mayank says processing of data integrity is nightmare in healthcare. Absolutely, yes, yes. So a lot of new messages. Just curious about a topic you mentioned. Has pneumonia become predictable based on AI ML? Why not? Yes, of course. There are different models that help you understand based on the symptoms and based on the past diagnosis. You can actually predict whether pneumonia is predictable or not. Not just pneumonia, a lot of other diseases. All right. Karthik asks, do they pay you more for going through all of this hardship in medical industry rather than consulting or in e-commerce where things are more productive? All right, great question. Do they pay you more for going through all of these hardship in medical industry? So you're primarily, what I understand is you're trying to understand, is healthcare giving us more money as compared to other e-commerce, because then that is, things are more predictable there. Mm, Not really, I would say, but again, the herd mentality is less here. Things are pretty new. You would not find a lot of people doing it. Like every other person right now is becoming a data scientist, but if you become a data scientist with healthcare, it's still unexplored yet, and I think you would have a good head start if you start doing it now. So eventually, maybe because you know janta kam hai, isliye you might get more money. Yeah, maybe, probably, yes. But yeah, I think it is comparable. I wouldn't say that, Mintra zyada paise degi as compared to Eli Lilly or ZS. Not really. I don't think they are comparable. End of the day, you are a data scientist. You're going to serve as, somebody who is going to use data to make better decisions. So it's all about which industry is more crowded. Try avoiding that industry and try looking into those industries that need things from scratch, that are upcoming. That's my personal suggestion. Again, that differs completely on you and person to person. All right, Ritik asks, how do the companies take note of the past insurance records of different companies of patients? These days, governments too are providing insurance covers. Do they have a common database? Exactly, Ritik. They do not have a common database. If you happen to work on somebody on a use case or a story where you have to consolidate, as I mentioned earlier as well, consolidating all of these data sets is itself a huge challenge. So, like I mentioned, IQVIA is IQVIA. It's a company that sells data. There are a lot of different data vendors that sell these records. So, their job is itself to consolidate and provide it to a company to use it as a master database or a common pool database. So different companies are involved in doing this task, but again, it's a huge I would say scenario. And no, there's no common database right now. It's something that you have to create. All right, Anurekha asks, is there an overfitting problem in healthcare machine learning models? Because low accuracy is also a problem in healthcare, isn't it? Low accuracy is a huge problem, yes. Overfitting तो तब होगा ना जब आप कुछ, ओवरफिटिंग तो कभी होता ही नहीं है. It's more about underfitting. It's more about the healthcare. Low accuracy is a great problem, and accuracy is, I think, the least of the evaluation metric that we use in healthcare. It's more about precision, recall, and the FN scores, and the trade-off between these three is something that we have to understand. Sultan asks, will get this recorded video of this class? Yes, I think the team is going to put up after this is done in your sessions. Sabir asks, what kind of analysis is most often done on healthcare data, like claims data? All right, good question. What kind of analysis is done on healthcare data, like claims? Healthcare data though involves a lot, like as we discussed, social media data, wearable devices data, all of these things involve a lot. Uh, what kind of analysis can be done on claims data is, again, I think classification for sure, like which diseases, or prediction for sure, because again, which diseases, using your medical history or your trends, or overall looking at the claims data of multiple patients with the same medical history, might say everybody, say we've just taken into consideration all the patients suffering from stage 2 cancer, okay, and all of these like can be used to now understand what are the different symptoms, how did they come, because every time you hear somebody detecting with cancer, you might not know the root cause of it. So definitely a lot of analysis can be done around the root cause of it, like how did they actually get to it, or how did they directly traverse to stage 2, what was stage 1 for them, how was their history around that. So you can use a lot of those areas. A lot of analysis. I am just giving you an example again. Uh, Gokul Krishnan asks, can I enter genome sequence with computer science background? Genome sequencing with computer science background would be an amazing thing. You can use lot of your learned techniques or your concepts to genome sequencing. I think it's a vast field, and again, a beautiful field. And I think if you are interested, why not? Yes, you are going to get if that is your question, that am I going to get an added advantage or a added edge? Yes, for sure, for sure. So Harsh asks, analytics in e-commerce versus healthcare industry. Okay, this is a good question. Analytics in e-commerce versus healthcare industry, as we again just discussed earlier as well, भीड़ कहाँ है वो एक चीज होती है. But in e-commerce, again, you can predict the customers, you can predict their next steps, you can predict, what would you do in a better way, how can you keep a bottle jar next to say chips, and it would sell more as compared to, you guys might have heard about the beer diaper example, like there was, if you keep diapers next to beers, there are more probability, there's more probability that it's going to sell more. So in very layman terms, and to boil it down to a very summarized way, analytics and e-commerce is very predictive. You can predict the next steps of your customers, and you can tame their next steps according to how you market it or how you keep your products in a better way. Whereas in healthcare industry, there is no shopping market, there is no choice of a patient who is the end user, who is going to give you money at the end of the day, that he wants to do that treatment or not. So I think analytics in healthcare and e-commerce is differ in that way. And again, the second part is, in e-commerce, the data that you're going to use or going to get is very, very structured. It's always structured, it's always going to be something that is, very easily consolidated or created a master data pool. But in healthcare, it is a huge, huge task. So that's, I think, two major differences that I can boil it down to. Mayank asked, which type of work you did in healthcare means as a data scientist. Okay. Right. I think this would be something that I can take up. What kind of work I did? I happen to work on a lot of different use cases. I think one of the very interesting use case that I can think of right now is of course, I used to work on a lot of, creating the master data pool, considering we had 80 different data sources, and I had to create one record of coming in from 80 different resources. So which attribute to keep from which source, which attribute makes more sense, which attribute is more trusted. When I say attribute, I mean feature. A single column of any healthcare data is so costly that you have to always find an alternative. Say, identification number of a doctor can be the most costliest feature that you might buy from a data vendor. So that is one type of work that you do. The other type of the work that I did, and a very interesting use case, was like I mentioned, these MRs or the field representatives go to the doctors. They get notes back, right? Now these notes back, now imagine there is not just one field representative that a pharma company might have hired. Imagine AstraZeneca has hired, say, 100 different MRs for entire India. Okay. And these MRs on an everyday basis, one MR goes to say two doctors. He meets two doctors in a day. That's his target. Now, once it's his target, imagine every day on a basis of this MR goes to these two different doctors every day. So a particular MR would get us, say, 20 days in a week. If in a month he's working, so he would get us 40 different doctors notes, 40 different doctors notes from one MR. Now imagine the company has hired 100 now. So we have around, in a month, around 400, no, 100, no, so 4,000 notes coming in from the entire India in a month. Now, do you think it is humanly possible for any team, any R&D team or anybody to read 4,000 clinical notes coming in from these different MRs and try to help and understand, what the drug is doing, what is the pain points of the, patients, what are the pain points of the doctors, what is working well on what is not working well? Imagine, that is so difficult. And by the time, even if somebody sits and, a team sits and reads them and try to draw inclusions out of it, there might be a possibility that that disease might have already, like extravagated, or that symptom might have just created a fusion or a huge carcass out there, right? So then in those scenarios, what I happened to work as a data scientist was, take those textual notes, again these are textual columns, so take those textual notes, apply NLP on it, and try to extract as much information as the like so main topics. So we applied LDA, we applied a lot of topic modeling techniques here, and we try to understand the key topics from it, and then use these key topics in and then try to classify it, say, that is more like a evidence gap. Like the doctors are not able to recommend that medicine because there is a lot of evidence gaps, like he didn't get good evidences to go around. I'm sorry. So to go around, so or to predict or prescribe it to people. So the doctor might be saying that this drug has a lot of evidences gaps. I don't know if it is going to lead in a better way. Or the suggestion might have come in that notes. There would be suggestions around the treatment practice. Like if you use this medicine right before chemo, you might the results are better. But if you use that right after chemo and you suggest the patient to take it after chemo, it is not that effective. So these are few things that you might want to know, and you might want to while you're marketing the product, you would want to say that to people. So these are few things that we took out as a main topics from these texts, and then targeted and classified them into different teams. Like there might be R&D team, there might be treatment practice team, there might be evidence gaps teams. So you need to take those texts, classify it based on these. So this was a very huge challenge I think I have worked on, and I think it was amazing to work with different stakeholders, different departments in a healthcare company. So Sultan, can we use data science for robotics and new product development, and how? I work as a mechatronics engineer, and so is this the question. Uh, New product development. New product development is, again, when you talk about in terms of healthcare, as we just discussed, new product development is again new drug development. I don't think you can come into the research part where people are making compounds. That is not where you'd use, but yes, you can use data science to now use those to identify the right problem statement. Like you as a healthcare company, now say you have taken out a drug, your drug was a blockbuster, it went down around for 20 years, अच्छा पैसा कमाया आपने, and now you given it that to, now your patent is dead, so you give it to the generic companies. Now you have to think of अब क्या नया बनाऊं, है ना? So अब क्या नया बनाऊं, may you as a data scientist can help the company understand what is the new product, or what is the new disease that is prevalent, or what is the new treatment that might be very much required by, say, black population or the Caucasian population. So that is for sure that you can use. So you can use data science is what I was trying to understand in every value chain of the pharma. All right. Since again we have a constraint of time, I cannot delve into all of these details, but I would if somebody wants to have a one-on-one discussion on it, we feel free to drop in. Okay. Rahul asks, can't we renew the patent? Good question, Rahul. We cannot. Yes and no, both actually. Yes, because there are workarounds. A lot of pharma companies, like every other jugaad that we do in industry, you take an extension, you take a blanket and all of those things. But again, not really like that. Those are like ethical problems. Like just now, AstraZeneca got sued because of one of their unethical ways of extending their patents, and they got sued of 60 million euros. So not really you can do that, but yeah, there are workarounds for a few more years, like 20 years to hota hi hai, maybe another couple of years, right? What's an impact of AI in health industry? I think it would be a huge impact. It is not yet seen. It is still an unexplored way, but yes, I think it's a huge impact. So people I understand that I'm taking up your breaks, who want to take a break before your other events, you can drop off. Feel free to drop your questions. Either way, I would be here for another 5 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes actually. I have another interview. So 2 minutes more, and I will take a couple of more questions. But yeah, what's relation between beer and diaper? Gokul Krishnan asked. Oh, it's a beautiful example. It's a beautiful use case. It's called market basket analysis that we do. So what we do in market basket is we try to understand market basket. So you go to a shopping cart and you can put in different products in your shopping cart, right? Be it online, be it offline, when you go to a shopping mart as well. So the supermarkets wanted to know, or Walmarts or different, I think, I'm not sure Walmart did that or I don't know, but supermarkets would want to know, if you keep beer in your shopping cart, what is the next thing that you're going to buy? So the next thing that you're going to buy is, if I understand through a pattern, I'm going to keep that next thing next to that product only, because then, just because you forgot or that was not in the same aisle, you might have not put it in your shopping cart. But if I understand that there is a relation between two products, I can easily keep them in the shelves. So all the things, any DMart or anywhere you go, you might see there are products kept in shelves, right? So again, there is analytics involved in that. There is proper thinking and thought process on, like, what should be kept next to what, so that the sales increase. So I would suggest you to go and check out market basket analysis. And beer and diaper example is a big one. Like, beer and diaper was something that was proven that if a single dad comes, or if anybody who buys beer on Sundays, they are going to buy diapers for their kids as well. So it was a huge example. Okay. Like placing chocolate near billing queue. Absolutely, yes. So that's a very well thought processes that we have in the way. Also, yes, guys, the team has also informed me that we have a quiz in the end. So you guys have to work on the quiz. I am so sorry. The others left, but yeah, please go around. It is a very simple quiz. I think it would be a nice way for you to understand whether you have understood any of these parts. And if you've not, you still know what you need to work upon. Yeah. I think I've been just speaking. Give me 1 second. Right. Which data sets one should work on to build better resume while applying for healthcare industry? Any specifics? There's no favorite data set of anybody in healthcare. I think it would be very novel, because that is not something everybody does. I think, Roshan, you can do is work on a lot of imaging data sets. That is very unique, that is very different, and it would be a very nice way for you to understand stuff as well. So I think Mohit has been raising hands since a long time. Mohit, do you want to say something? Not sure. Not sure. Mohit, if you want to say something, please drop in yes or no, so that I know that I need to do something. All right. Okay, not this. Can you please share? All right. I think we are good enough. Again, all right. It is seen on weekends that dads come for shopping, so they buy both. Yes, Shailesh, that's right. I think I've pretty much answered all your questions. If there's still, I would still appreciate them. Feel free to drop in anywhere. Again, I think overall healthcare is a very, very beautiful industry, and it is still unexplored. And I would just request you guys at the end of the day, maybe go around and just read about it and see how, it can be something that can be, that data science can leverage, and do a lot of wonders there. So overall, it's a beautiful industry with a lot of stakeholders, lot of problems, lot of different solutions that a data scientist, an analyst can provide. So yeah, I think have fun, everybody, and it would be great to see you guys in the healthcare space anytime soon. All right. Thank you so much for all the beautiful questions. Thank you so much for joining in on this Saturday afternoon. Really appreciate it. And have a good day, rest of the day. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you for the session, Ekta.
Not an issue. Officer. Absolutely loved it, Yashank.
Yeah. So, everyone, we will be starting with the quiz now. So I guess most of you are familiar with the Kahoot platform.
Awesome. Quiz time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are also having some prizes at the end. Like first position would be getting some
Wow.
prizes worth 1,500, and second would be 1,000 rupees, and the third one that would be getting worth around 500 rupees.
Wow. I cannot wait to give the quiz.
Kahoot.it. So from your devices, just go to kahoot.it. I'll be sharing my screen, and one game pin would be reflecting over there. You just need to put in the game pin over there. All the questions will be reflecting on my screen. You have to like simultaneously look at the screen, take the questions, and then answer them on your device. I'm
Awesome.
just starting with the quiz.
Are you sharing something, Yashav?
Just a second, starting with it. Okay, so here's the game pin. You can type in your name or your community ID. So it's going to be a quick quiz, just 5 questions, and be quick with your responses.
Awesome, you guys. Imagine the ones who dropped off. Less competition for you all.
So here's the link as well. We'll wait for just 1 more minute, and then we'll begin with the quiz.
I don't see my name here. Sultan, it might be there. It would have scrolled down, maybe.
So Sultan, what's showing on your screen?
See your name, nickname on screen. What
Uh,
name did you put in, Sultan? I feel
here it
bad.
is, Sultan. Yeah,
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, I feel bad for you.
78 have joined. I think we should begin then. Okay, starting with it. So the first question. The majority of pharmaceutical companies' revenue come from
Yay. Good, good.
mm,
All positive
majority of you got it correct. So Ashruti is at the top now.
amazing. Guys, you have to be quick. Quick to be on
Yeah.
top. Amazing.
There are 4 stages in product life cycle. Nice.
Awesome. Yes.
Awesome. So going to the next question. What do you mean by generic drugs?
For
Oh,
people who have done 15 drugs available over counter. Amazing. Awesome. Harsh. Come on, Ashruti. You can do it.
drug efficacy stands for. Oh,
Great. Guys, efficiency stands for real world setting. Efficacy is in controlled.
so it's a tough competition now. So the final question. Be quick. Why is healthcare data so complex?
Awesome.
Let's
Guys,
see
all
who's
of the above. All of the above. Yay, Niraj. Vignan.
Oh,
Yay.
congratulations, Ashruti, Vignan, and Neeraj.
Congratulations, Ashruti, Niraj, and Vignan. Really proud of you guys. अच्छे से सुना है तुमने काफी.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ashruti, you will be getting the prizes worth 1,500, and Vignan, your prizes would be worth 1,000 rupees, and Neeraj, you'll have 500 rupees. So we'll collect your details and then we'll inform you accordingly within coming weeks.
Wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Really nice talking to you all. I will also drop off.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. When will be the next quiz? Next quiz happens in the next community event. So feel free to
Yes.
drop in. All right. Have a
Okay,
good
then.
day. Bye bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.